Hi, everybody, and welcome to our next Collective Awakening podcast with myself, Stephen, and Chris, all the way from sunny Fleetwood. Are you enjoying the lovely, warm, sunny days? I'm sweating buckets. So today's episode is about the death experience. Should we fear death? Chris, what's your thoughts?
Well, for me, a lot of this work that we've been brought into, the spiritual work, the knowing of spirit, is to alleviate the fear of death. You know, fear can be very powerful, and the fear of death is something that many, many people carried. It's been interweaved into through religion, there's certain beliefs as well, which can bother people to say the least. So I think it's a really important subject. And ultimately, what drives a lot of people to spirit connection as well. Because when somebody can communicate with you from the spirit world, that is ultimately saying life goes on.
Life is continuous.
Life is continuous.
I mean, that's our job, isn't it, as a medium? I say this in my introductory when I speak to a client for the first time and say my job as an evidential medium is to prove to you that life is eternal, life continues beyond this physical realm. But why do you think so many people fear death then? I mean, I know that as something that I've experienced. Have you experienced the fear of death?
100%. And perhaps it's the fear of the unknown. A lot of people actually fear the way they're going to die as well.
That's a big one.
So the simplest way I could put it is I feel it's the fear of the unknown.
Not knowing what's beyond this, if there is more.
It's the big question, isn't it? It's maybe the biggest question. You know, what happens beyond this life we're living now?
Yeah, it can be extremely frightening for people. I know that it's something that I've experienced, and I've been working with spirit for 25 years. It is, and then again, some amazing evidence and proof has been brought forward. Names, dates, situations that there's no way you can make that up, that proves that the soul is continuous, it moves on, it lives on. But there is a lot of people out there I know that I've encountered. And do you think knowing that there is more helps with that fear of death then?
I think it greatly helps you alleviate the fear of death. I think it is helping the way we treat death as a society as well, is slightly altering more and more and more, if that makes sense. So I feel the way we look at death, it's actually not something that people talk about a lot as well, is it?
I think it's a bit of our culture. It's a very Western culture. Look at funerals. It's often seen you wear black, you grieve, you mourn. And actually something that really inspired me is watching a lot of Osho's teachings. And he talked about, and I don't know if you remember watching the documentary, and he said about that you should never, ever cry in front of your loved one. You laugh, you joke, you tell stories, you celebrate that person, that soul's life. Once they've been buried, once you cremated them, the grief then starts then. So again, the old Atlantean teachings, the old ancient cultures saw death as a very different way. We would be encouraged as children to participate in the preparation, because death, actually the word death doesn't exist in a lot of ancient cultures.
Yeah.
So I think, there is a lot of religion. Talk me a bit about that then. Is that the fear of going to hell?
Well, judgment, that's not been mentioned. That's a good point. Am I going to go to hell? Is somebody going to judge me? Is there going to be somebody there with a big book? A lot of that's been alleviated, I would say. And remember, for me, when you pass to the spirit world, which is important to mention, there can be that unconditional love for you, but you can still hold on to certain mindsets. You're still a creator as well. So you could have certain people there and still deny it in a way. So this is why some of these belief systems and such are very, very powerful. But what I experience a lot, particularly in readings, is with people with their loved ones when they come through, is actually the relief they feel when they passed as well. It's almost like and not in a relief of, well, God, that's over. More in a relief of, I'm all right. That was it, easy.
Yes.
I'm okay.
Are you talking about the soul that's now transitioned to
Yeah.
spirit that have gone through?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, particularly when they've gone home and the physical is really, really gone through it, is almost like a relief in that sense, and they'll hang on. You know, I've experienced that in a lot of readings. I'm sure
Mm.
you have, where the loved ones will almost feel like they've got to give permission to that person. It's all right to go. It's all right to let go. We'll be fine.
Yeah, I want to touch on that actually. So when you sat with a loved one, it's number one, something that I feel passionate about is a great honor and a privilege to be with somebody that is ready to go back home to spirit.
Yeah.
And there is absolutely nothing to fear. So from the perspective of the family member sitting and watching their loved ones take their last breaths is a great honor, and there should not be anything to fear. And as you're holding your hand, it's something that it's quite important to mention. It's okay to give them permission to go.
Yeah.
And that takes great strength and courage and love to say to that loved one, it's all right to go. And I found that actually in readings, that gets mentioned quite a bit.
Yeah, it
Where,
fascinates me, that.
yeah,
And we're not
yeah,
talking about people who are involved in any sort of spirituality here.
yeah,
And the people that have just had that feeling of, this is what I need to do. And this is the interesting thing about this work. Once you get opening up, everybody's got a story. And a lot of the stories revolve around the end of someone's life around them. It's what brings them into the moon. Remember, the loss of someone, maybe something they've experienced. A lot of people also experience the when they've what's the word I want to look for here? You know, when somebody passes like on the operating table for minutes and then they go
death experience,
near death experience.
it's a body experience.
Countless books have been written on that, of people who had no belief in the afterlife as such, and they've had that experience and it's been so rock solid, they've come back and written a book and gone, look, I've seen this. So there can be very, very many different scenarios. Yeah.
So just going back there, so you sat with your loved one that has taken the last breath. Who decides when that soul is ready to go or not? Do they decide?
They
or
decide.
So the soul will say, it's my time now to go.
I think what you can have is like guides, or let's give a scenario. Let's say it's a lady who's there and she's on end of life care, for example, and a really strong personality and somebody that's been very strong in their life, and they're there and they want to keep hearing away, but they know the body's failing.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That lady might have a husband in spirit, for example, who stood there. Now, he won't be saying, it's time for you to go, but there might be a suggestion, it's all right, we're here. How many people do you get who mention that, who, again, aren't involved in any sort of spirit work or readings, anything like that, their entire life, and they'll say, well, I'm seeing people.
And they're talking to loved ones, aren't they, in the room?
So they're there, and that can happen weeks before, where they're beginning to make the preparations, where they're here. And that's what's really important to mention, is that, and particularly this was important during the 2020, when people, and I mentioned this a lot, I almost feel like it was our duty, I have to say in many ways, is that when nobody's there physically, there will be someone there in spirit for that person.
I think that's really important.
Now, nobody's ever on their own. Even if it's their guide, who there will be, and even an animal friend, there will be someone that they'll be able to recognize and say, you know, I'm going to be all right. And ultimately, what that provides is almost like a cushion for them to go, I'm going to be all right. I can let go. It's time.
So I think in that moment, you at the end of the day, you're still in that body, and you might feel that you're trapped, and sometimes we get lost in the earthly experience. And I think all souls, no matter their sense of awareness, sometimes do need a little bit of a helping hand. And then there's some souls that are like, I'm getting out of here. I'm done here. They've had a heart attack. They've had a really quick death. And I found this in readings, and that was a good death for them. And I'm a believer that we all choose, as part of our reincarnation, how we're going to die. I think part of our plan, to a degree, is to choose our death as well.
Interesting.
I feel, I believe, and sometimes I say to loved ones who I read for and say, look, oh, I wish my dad was still here. And I said that quick, I didn't have a chance to say goodbye. I went, he, and what I tried to explain to them as the dad comes forward is he's saying it was a good death for him. That's the way he would have wanted to go. He wouldn't have wanted to lie in bed
But it's
for weeks
interesting.
and weeks in pain.
Yeah, we touched on this in the previous episode, didn't we, about guilt.
Yeah.
Everything's as it is meant to be. And that's a reminder, you know, whether it's the dad or whomever coming through, reminding them, saying, look, everything's as it was meant to be. Don't feel bad for this, that, and the other. It was as it was meant to be. But it's interesting that you talk about, because it's something I've thought about a lot over the years of, you know, do we plan? There's so much talked about our planning when we return to the earth, played in reincarnation, but not much talked about the end part, the end of this particular journey.
Because there's a way to avoid the end. And we can't avoid it.
But also what that opens up for, and it's another thing that I have thoughts on, but they're quite open-ended, about exit points.
Wow, do you want to explain that a little bit about exit point?
Well, I was hoping you would.
All right. Yeah, go on.
But really, to me, I'll sort of mention my thoughts quick and then maybe you can expand on it, is exit points for me are, say, if we'll go for your theory that we've planned a certain death, if that makes sense, certain scenario. And before that point, there will be several, what I'd call exit points, where there'll be, it's like options. For me, quite a few people have took that over the last few years, that I've done as much as I want to do in this life. I'm going to take this exit point.
Well, and there's also another theory behind that, which I read in the Michael Newton book, and there was somebody that got regress, is that sometimes when you've done your work, there's that opportunity where you can come home to spirit.
Yeah.
Or they'll say, actually, no, I might stay a little bit longer. I might stay another 20 years because I'm just going to live my life now. I've done my bit. So you've got that other way. But I find exit points, and it's something that I can share with everybody on this podcast today, actually, is that I remember being very poorly when I was about 11, 12 years old. And I had pneumonia and I was in hospital for about 6, 7 weeks. And I remember the first 2 weeks just being on a ventilator, just being really poorly, sleeping. And even then at that age, I remember this Indian woman, and I've seen her twice when I've been ill, who sat at the edge of the bed. And she just sat there, and I just thought she was a doctor, but she had all her Indian gear on. And much later on, only about 3 or 4 years ago, I came to understand that I could have exited that point in my life. What I feel happened was my guides, because at that point I didn't know anybody. At 11, 12 years old, I think I only knew my great grandma that passed over, but nobody else. And so there would have been this big discussion to say, look, Stephen, if you're going to come back, this is the repercussion of it. Things are going to change. What about all the things you want to do and you want to learn?
Yeah.
So it's not like an exit here. Here's the key. I'm going to bugger off. I'm going to go. There's going to be talks. There's going to be discussions. Look, we've been told, look, if you want to come back to the earth, it's going to be tough, Stephen. You've chosen a bit of a tougher life here. Are you sure you want to do this? Yeah, I'll be fine. Yeah, I'm going to do it. So there's different points in your life that are exit points. And then you have predestined things. And the predestined things is what will happen, what can happen, will happen, is meant to happen. So there's certain things in your journey that is meant to happen, that's meant to occur. Once you hit the earth plane, things do change. There's accidents that happen where loved ones are not meant to die. We've heard in 9/11, there was thousands of people that for whatever reason took their transition in that moment. And there were hundreds of people that felt, I don't want to go to work today.
Yeah.
That I don't want to, and they decided that it wasn't their time. It wasn't their exit at that point. In my opinion, you're meant to live a long, healthy life, or whatever, however you've chosen. And sometimes I remember being on the plane last year, and I was so scared. For some reason, I had this fear that, oh my God, this plane's going to crash. And knowing everything I know, why the hell would I think that? And his voice came into my head saying, Stephen, you're meant to live a long and healthy life. So that's really stuck into my mind as part of my divine purpose to do my spiritual work is
And the plane pulled up.
pull up and then pull back down, thinking, oh my God. So again, fears can come up at different
There's the other side of it as well, isn't there? And we've all known of somebody like this in our lives that's had loads of stuff happen in their life. We think, oh, they're not going to be here very long. They carry on like that. And they're like a cat with 9 lives to keep going and keep going, live till they're about 100 as well. So that's
for me, what I would analyze that is that the soul will go when it's learned its lessons. And I know clients whose grandparents or parents have got dementia that's stuck in the mind, and they say they won't go. They're not. And I said, you have to be patient. They will only go when they are ready. They will only go back home to spirit when they are ready. So if people listening and you've got loved ones that are in comas or that have got dementia, they've got cancer, they will leave the physical body when it's time for them. And for whatever reason, they've come, and even in the end of life experience, there's a lot of lessons that can be learned as the one that's experiencing it, and also for the loved ones that are around as well. Because how do you know that in a previous life the roles were reversed and they were looking after you in your end of life? So you have soul contracts for the end of life experience, won't you?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
So I just want to go now. We talked a lot about the physical death. So what happens then in that moment? Can spirit take your soul and take you back to spirit, or do you have to do that yourself?
I've never heard a scenario where anybody is taken. But
so what happens to the actual death? So the physical body dies.
Well, the best I know, because it's of experiences, what's been recounted, is that when you sort of pass, when you move, it's like moving from one room to another in a way. That's what you're doing. So to me, you might be very aware of loved ones in the spirit world, and that can include animals as well. You might become more and more aware of them. Perhaps somebody will come. Perhaps there'll be a home. It could be a childhood home, something like that. Something you're going to be very comfortable with, because it's not like for me just go in and you go, well, everything's all right now. The good word is transitioning. That's what you're doing. You're transitioning. If, for example, if you were in a wheelchair the last 20 years of your life, it's that transition to say, that physical is gone now. I'm not with them physical limitations anymore. And that takes a little bit of time, I feel.
I agree with you with that. I think it depends on the soul as well, because people have said as well, or do I have to wait 12 months for my dad to come through? Now, sometimes I've had people that have come who wanted a reading with me, whose mum died a year ago, still hasn't come through. I've done readings where a client's come to see me and the dad's come through and he's only died 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And it depends on the vibration of the soul. How long's a piece of string? You can't say that with every soul. Yeah. Everyone's different.
And I've had a couple of people tell me this, where they've been in the room next door and they know they've passed.
How do they know?
They just have a feeling, or they've heard something or experienced something and they've gone.
And sometimes
more than one person's told me that.
And the soul comes to see them. I've had experiences.
Or I've experienced in readings where they've come sort of back for that moment, but it's not to give any profound message. It's just to say goodbye to everyone and then to move on, and maybe to come back at a later time.
I agree. And what I feel is that the soul won't go that far into the light at first. Normally, most souls will wait to say their goodbye, and they will see until the funeral has happened, the physical funeral. And I can only share that with people through my experience, the readings, to say over and over again, loved ones who've come through to say they were there at the funeral. They've shown the song that was chosen or wasn't chosen, or they liked the flowers, or they've told me what they've put in the coffin, or saying, "Oh, why didn't you not put my lovely purple dress on? Why did your dad put that red dress on me? I didn't like that red dress." Or the hair wasn't done properly. And it's just, again, that humour that laughter and that evidence. And I think once everything's sorted, in order for us to heal, the soul needs to heal, move on deeper into the spirit world. And I think that's where
that really the grieving process is important to mention as well. It's not just happening here. It's not grief as such, but there is a process happening that is intertwined at the same time of adjustment as the grieving process happens here. And there can be many different reasons why someone in the spirit world hasn't come through or passed a message on. It can be for reasons here. That person might not be emotionally ready for that, might be too much for them. There can be a lot of scenarios, different parts to that.
Absolutely. I only read for a lady a couple of weeks ago, and she was so desperate of wanting her son to come through. And her mum come through, her dad come through. She loved every aspect of the reading, and then she got teary at the end, saying, "Why's my son not come through? He died last year." And I said, straight away, what I picked up with her is that she's still very angry. She's really angry, and that's blocking her. Not blocking the spirit. The son's there. Is until she's ready to let go that anger go and forgive. And the minute she sort of accepted that and was aware of that, she dropped her guard, and her son come through then, gave me his name, gave me the description. And so again, it's not every scenario, every soul is different depending on their experience. But I just want to go a little bit about, people talk about the tunnel of light.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on, do we all go through this tunnel of light?
I'm going to be really honest with this. The stories have been recounted, reliable sources. I believe that's what we do. Do I know for sure? No, I don't. Because I don't remember doing it personally. It's one of them things we'll find out. Does it feel right to me? Yeah. The other part, the way I see it is, I think maybe part of our human mind is we always see ourselves going somewhere, don't we?
Yeah.
Whereas I think it's more of a meeting. I just get this imagery of our loved ones, our guides gathering around us almost in a ceremonial sense, preparing the preparation.
And would they be aware of our death as well then?
Yeah.
So they would be coming close to us.
Weeks before, maybe.
Weeks before.
Maybe more, and again, each scenario is very different. But the other part I wanted to touch on is something that was given to us very early on, which is what you call like a spiritual hospital.
That's what I've just written down. Absolutely. That's an interesting point.
And this is, say, for people who've been we mentioned physical conditions, physical care long term. And like we say, we don't just go to spirit and go, well, everything's fine. Of course it is, but our thoughts can still be of that condition, that energy of it. So what will happen is we'll go to a place that's in a convalescent place, really, where our loved ones are there. We're surrounded by love, but in a way we'll sort of be sleeping, waking and readjusting, and slowly readjusting as people are saying to us, look, this is what happened now. You passed, you return back home. That physical condition's not there anymore, and slowly you'll start to adjust.
It ultimately what resonates with you, somebody that's in Africa or an Aboriginal or in China might, when they go home to spirit, will see something that resonates with them.
Yeah.
And I think this is where often within our culture, you find souls, in my experience, has done in readings as well, where when they've gone home to spirit, have been in a spiritual hospital. And I think it does depend on the type of passing. Yeah. If it's been quite traumatic, suicide, if it's car crash, dementia, cancer.
Another one to touch on, it might be veering away a little bit, is those who feel they've sort of done bad things in this life as well, of the fear of judgment upon passing. Also is another part.
Well, it's important to mention, in my understanding, there isn't such thing as hell in spirit.
Yes.
There is different, in the way I describe the spirit world is that it is different layers. It's like a cake, different layers, and each layer vibrates at a particular color and frequency. There's no higher or lower, but there is more denser energies and there are more higher energies, and it depends on our own spiritual progression. We match. When I go back home to spirit, my frequency, well, I'm going to go to a frequency that resonates with my
Yeah,
frequency and their frequency, and the same
absolutely.
with soul groups. So this is why we are attracted to certain people more than others, because we resonate to similar frequency and similar
Uh-huh.
vibrations. So we're in spirit, there's different frequencies, different energies. And it's important to mention, what I was going to mention.
You were talking about when we pass, so the different those who judge themselves
Oh,
or difficult
yeah,
situations, and then what sort of meets us.
yeah. So if we are what we think. You talked about it before. So if you think you're going to go into damnation and you think really negatively about your death, and you're going to go home to spirit and you don't want to see the light, and you're gonna take yourself to a frequency and energy that's not good, that's not going to be a very high frequency vibration. But if you go home to spirit and you're able to forgive yourself and understand what's happened has happened for a reason and purpose, and then that person that perhaps you've done really unkind things to has forgiven you, and there's been that healing at some point, I think you, I think you're going to go to a frequency that matches your energy.
Yeah.
I don't think we're all in the same pot.
So
It
it'd be
depends.
fair to say in that sense that the only judgment is self-judgment.
And for me, that's probably the hardest thing that I've came to accept, because it would be easy for somebody like God, the divine, your guides, to sit there and to judge you. And actually the hardest thing is to judge thyself,
Yeah.
to look within and to actually look at your own life and say, these are things I got right, and shoot, these are things I didn't get quite right. Oh my God, I hurt that person. Now, talking about that, I will lead on to, you're in spirit, you're reunited with your guides, with your loved ones, you're back home to spirit.
Yeah.
Talk about the look about your life review. So after about a year in spirit, you will look on your reincarnation, your last reincarnation you've just lived. So what does a life review entail?
My understanding of a life review, it's been explained by a few people that it can almost be like a physical room, if that makes sense, or almost a realm in its own way, in which we will look back on our life, we'll see it from our perspective, but we'll also see it from the perspective of others as well. So how our actions perhaps were received, or people experience them in a very positive way, perhaps otherwise we might hurt people or not quite learn lessons. So it can be, for me, a very joyful, enlightening experience, but also a little bit sobering as well.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of a difficult watch to go, oh, but ultimately at the end of it, we've learned something. I feel it can sort of sow the seeds to people's next incarnation in a way as well. Perhaps seeing things they'd like to tweak or experience more of.
And then to go deep into that, I think once you've had your life review, the review will also entail with your one true spirit guide,
Yeah.
teachers, the inspirers that will sit down with you, and you will seek their counsels, not that is demanded. And your one guide, or one true spirit guide, will sit with you and say, yeah, you've done a really good job there, but there's a lot of things there you didn't get quite right.
Yeah.
How do you, or they'll pose you the question, well, do you think you could have done things a little bit different there? And sometimes the soul will say, oh my God, I did it again. I fell into power, greed, and jealousy again in this life. Oh my God, I did get things right there, but I again fell into that trap. I might have to study, maybe I have to work on that a little bit more. Can you give me a little bit more advisement? And the guide or the teacher will say, well, you need to do a little bit more research. You need to speak to other like-minded souls that also have come back to learn that same lesson.
That's a good point. So it takes away, there's no being alone. We make the decision through our free will, but there are counsels, guides, those with experience. We could visit the halls of learning. We could look at things. This is why when we reincarnate, it's not something we just put together very quickly. It's very carefully selected. So every single facet is going to be nourishing to our journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So how would you describe then the spirit world? And then going back to, should we fear death? What is the spirit world? How would you describe it? Should we fear it?
Do you know, I could say a lot of things, but what I'm going to say, it's going to be what you need it to be.
Wow.
A good example of that's that Robin Williams film, What Dreams May Come. And I think in it, he's in his own painting, isn't he? With all the colours. And I've heard of people who say, I'm in my home. I've got my home in the spirit world, my lovely garden. I'm really happy. I think it's what you need it to be. But I think there's different, I'm trying to think of another word, not levels. Different vibrations that you'll go to. I think other people might go to different areas, different vibrations of where they've come from as well. Maybe it depends on your origins, but I think it's what you need it to be. I really do. You know, maybe some people come back in this life and they've lived many lives on the earth and they're ascending when they return back.
What do you mean by What do you mean by ascending?
Maybe it's the last incarnation on the earth. And
I could never imagine that.
You never know, do you? This is where it's quite broad, but in simple fact of talking from our perspective, I think it is what it needs to be. Yeah.
Or what you want it to be, because you are a mirror, aren't you? You are what you create.
Well, you can create things, can't you? It's like you see this with people. How would you want to look? Well, maybe some people, when they pass, they might have passed when they were 80 years old, but they might have lived a really happy life, been happy with themselves when they were 40 or 50. So maybe they prefer to look that way. Maybe they prefer to revert back to another way in another life. You know, it's not the physical realm which is important. It's an energetic realm.
Yeah, and I think the way I can describe it, the spirit world personally, is love, unconditional love. There is, and I think it's important, and it will alleviate the fear of death. There is and will never, ever be any judgment against you. So whatever we do, and sometimes people struggle to understand this, and we've had this in previous circles, no matter what somebody does, you are still loved unconditionally. There's never, ever no judgment put against any soul. The love is unconditional.
Well,
humans, and our human mind, we can't comprehend that.
Yeah, and in the same sense, because I used to have somebody that come and they asked me the same question every week. Oh, if somebody's killed someone, what happens to them when they go to the spirit world? And what they wanted to hear from me is, the eternal damnation.
Yeah.
And I gave them pretty much the same answer every week, which is, well, we judge ourselves. All I can tell you is nobody escapes their own actions and deeds. They will have to be faced. You know, they will. And this is why, in a way, it's we all have to face our own actions at some point. And do you know what? I think this is when it comes down to maybe what is challenging in different ways for us all on the earth. When we talk about the word unconditional love, and that's what is in the spirit world for even that person in that time. Say if they've done something, what we'd see really bad, and when they return and they'll place that judgment on themselves, maybe things will become clearer. What do they need at that time? Are they going to need more judgment or love?
Absolutely. And if you want to, and watch the film, The Shack.
The Shack is the one.
Watch that film, and that is something that really fundamentally helped me heal through a bit of a tough time in my life.
They make a good point in that, in which they say, well, judge this person, and what's perceived as a higher sort of energy will then say, well, if I judge that person, I've got to judge everyone. So where does it stop? Who's never took a misstep in their life or lifetimes?
And that helped me heal my relationship with my parents, because what it was shown to me was actually them as wounded children themselves.
Yeah.
And their parents wounded. So how can I judge them? And how can I judge them? And it goes on and on and on. But you don't know, you know, looking on a soul contract level, you know, talk about people that do bad things or good things or bad things, however you want to interpret. And even people that have certain ailments, you don't know what contract they have. Well, I remember a lady in Circle who wanted to say, well, spirit can we do trance healing, and spirit will help heal this person with cancer. or heal this person with dementia. And Spirit said, well, we can't interfere. How do you know that that person's come back to have that experience as part of their learning?
Yeah.
We've had this in regression. We're not here to take blocks away. They've come to experience certain things.
It's something that was shared by Boris Walter that made a lot of sense to me, in which in a session that he was doing, and they were looking at something that was a bit of a shadowy energy around this lady's heart. And he said, oh, can we remove this? Can something be done? And what was brought forward was, said, no, that's something she's come back to experience. If you take that away, you take from her experience. And this is where we have to be careful, because do you know when sometimes people look at judgment as being like,
right,
person's not, yeah. It isn't actually always, is it, coming to mind? It's looking at somebody from your perspective and deciding what's right for them when really you don't know. Because you don't know the path, you don't know what they've come back to experience, you don't know. You know, like it's a little bit that scenario. The more you tell somebody not to walk through a door, the more chance they're going to walk through it.
I think absolutely, looking from a different perspective, it's selfishness. And I remember when I did a lot of inner work, helping me heal the wound of my mother and father, that my parents did their best. And it's selfish of me to expect my parents to love me how I want them to love me. But if I can accept their love how they can love me, then that's all right.
Yeah.
So again, it's the same judgment. It's selfish of us to point our finger and expect people to live their lives how we want them to live them. Well, that's selfish, isn't it?
Another controversial thing is that's actually as well, it's not compassion. True compassion is actually letting somebody be free to live their life.
However we perceive it.
However we perceive it.
And I think, looking on a global scale, that if we can accept that we have individual soul contracts, I believe we can have contracts as a larger soul group, tens of thousands, tens of millions, who come back to have certain karmic.
So how do you think it works? You know, you mentioned things like 9/11, but there's probably other examples as well. How do you feel it works when a large group of people sort of go to spirit at the same time? What do you think's happening there?
Well, I think, just going back to the spirit side, and I've just recently watched a podcast, and I can't remember the gentleman's name, and he talked about the Second World War. And I could talk from experience because I'm half German, and part of my German family, there's a lot of trauma there, who got beheaded, that were taken from the Nazis. So there's a lot of trauma there, what they experienced, that where we looked at before what happened in the Second World War with the Nazis and the Jews, and really the destruction of many cultures and communities, not just the Jews, but the homosexuality, the gay community, the gypsies, the Polish. I think there wasn't any nation that didn't get affected. That there was some kind of contract before their reincarnation. And if we believe that everything that's happened for a reason, there was a collective agreement to say, we are going to come back because there is some collective karma. We've come back to shift, to clear some psychic debt. Right. If that's what we want, who's going to play the villain?
Yeah.
We need somebody who's going to play the villain. And what this gentleman talked about is that these villains were beings that were of a less developed soul. I don't like to call less enlightened. I wouldn't even like to use the word dark. Souls that also wanted to progress and say, right, we are going to play this role for you. We're going to do this for you to pay off this karma. And by doing this, it's going to help us, and it's going to help you as well to pay off this collective karma. That's why I feel when there's wars in Palestine and things like that, I think that's what's happening. There is some kind of collective shift. Obviously, when we are over-identifying in this earthly experience, people might say, Stephen, how can you say that? How can you say suffering's a choice? And I think it is. Every experience is a choice. Every decision we make It's for a reason and purpose. That's have I sort of put that in right?
Yeah, it just opens up the scenarios, doesn't it? And again, something that I always like to say, it draws us back from the picture to see what's unfolding. Why do these things happen? Which I think everybody's asked, don't they? You know, why is there a need for that? Why has it happened? You know, even in certain scenarios of the past in our history, many will observe and say, well, there was only X number of guards and there was so many people being held, they could have overpowered them very easily.
Yeah.
You know, and you start to understand the how and the why. But I think sometimes people are frightened of looking at that opposing view, almost like it's being disrespectful to those people in a way.
I think it gets us out of the victim perspective.
Yeah.
It helps us understand that actually the most important is no matter what happens, there is no death.
Yeah.
There is death does not exist. No matter what happens to us physically, when we go home to spirit, we're going back to the light, and that's all right.
Yeah.
That's all right. But I just want to rear off that conversation just a little bit about, and it's a question that a lot of clients ask me and you, which is, do souls still feel pain when they go home to spirit? Are they still do they still feel that they've got no leg, or they still feel they've got dementia?
Well, the short answer would be no, but also I think it's a time of transition, like I mentioned earlier on. That's where we bring in the spiritual hospital, the time of adjustment as well. So you may feel you've still got it, but it's not there. But that's going to take a bit of time. Some people, probably most cases, will be immediately freedom, the feeling of freedom.
I think it depends on the development of the soul.
It's got to be.
The development of the soul.
This is why we were always told early on in our circle that we joined that even if you were in a circle for a day, for one session, or you had a reading, or you read a book, that when you pass to the spirit world, you would have instant recall of that information. It'll be inside. It will be helpful to you. So I think it has to depend on the evolution of the soul a little bit. Yeah.
And I think also with in the mediumship side, when we give evidence, which is again all about proving that life is eternal, that the soul can never die, is that we bring elements to identify which soul we bring forward and who we are speaking to. Doesn't mean that they are feeling that pain and they want to relive that pain. And I just want to mention about dementia. It's something that I feel really passionate about, actually, and it's been mentioned countless times in the channelings and in the mediumship, the readings that I'd worked with clients with, who've had parents, grandparents, even brothers and sisters that have died through dementia. And often the soul will come through and bring that forward, and it will imprint on me something to do with the head, dementia. Yes, I can understand that. And then further to say is that they bring evidence forward to prove to them that they could still hear what they are saying.
Yes.
And I think this is important to mention if you do have family members that are going through dementia, even the bad dementia or the Alzheimer's, is that keep speaking to this person as if you're speaking to them before their dementia, because they can, even though they can't speak back, they can still hear you, even in coma. Victims.
You'll have a lot of people
coma
who will sit and read for people and such, and I think that's really good and continue to speak because they can hear you. That, you know.
Have you had that in your readings before, where you've had clients who've experienced something quite like a deathbed where they've been dying?
I had it from the spirit side when they come through and they'll say they could hear a.
So why is that important to mention that? Why would that help with the fear of death?
I think it's acknowledging. I think it's more on the emotional level, acknowledging to that person that those words they were expressing from the heart of comfort, that they were being acknowledged and they helped. That can bring a lot of comfort.
One thing I really want to mention as well, and it really made me laugh actually, because when you're a medium, and you don't know everything, and you learn so much through the stories that get brought forward. And there is this older gentleman, he was in his 86, 87. He had a lot of ailments, a lot of problems, and he passed over to spirit. And I was reading for the daughter, and he was jumping up for joy in spirit. And he went, "I'm so glad I've got rid of my body." It was so heavy. and so many problems, and he's jumping up and down, and it made me laugh, and it made her smile, made her laugh as well. Because I don't think we realize, and Spirit have mentioned it with us in our trance channelings, you know, we are in this physical body, the aches, the pains, just breathing, having to eat, having to go to the toilet, having to sleep, all these physical, we have to maintain this body.
Yeah.
No matter, no wonder we can get lost in it, because we've got so much to maintain all the time, haven't we?
100%.
So when we go home to Spirit, you're like, I'm free of this, if that makes sense. So just, is there any other, so I want to mention just another couple
I just want to mention, sort of on the death side,
yeah,
a lot of that fear has been solidified through religions. That's really important to me to mention, and we broke away from a lot of that, a lot of those thoughts over the years. And even people will say, oh, you shouldn't be dabbling in stuff like that and all this, you know. But the big eternal question for a lot of people is, what happens after this life? You know, what is death?
wow, life is eternal. Our true home, to keep it more simpler than that, is we call it going back home, because the spirit world is our home.
Yeah.
This, in a blink of our, look how quick our life's gone. I'm 40 now. It's gone so quick. This year's gone so quick. Before you know, we'll be having a cappuccino in Spirit, and we're like, Chris, that was fun, wasn't it? Should we do it again, mate? And we'll sit there and we'll be in Spirit, and we'll be with our Spirit family. Is again going back to life itself. Life is for the living. Don't, yes, grief is important as part of the human experience, but don't get lost in that grief. Your loved ones are safe in the spirit world. I've had it time and time again. Live your life. I am fine.
Yeah.
I'm happy. I'm back home to Spirit. Live your life. They're not going to care about the money. They're not going to care about the jewelry that they left behind, or how much money has been left behind, or the house, or clothes. They've got infinite energy in Spirit. We are the divine. We're not going to be bothered about those materialistic, physical things. But I want to mention something as we're coming close to the end of the podcast, is about the use of words where people will use the word loss or RIP.
Oh, God.
So tell me, why does this trigger you, Chris? I really want it to be controversial.
RIP drives me up the wall. No disrespect to anybody, really, but it drives me mad to people who should know better as well. Because you'll see it, and I see this in the spiritual movement when somebody passes and they put RIP, rest in peace. And I think, well, look at that. And actually, when somebody passes, and I've seen this recently with a few, in particular one lovely medium who passed, I think she was in her 80s, has done amazing work. And I find it as a big projection. Of all of a sudden, it's so sad. It's a rest in peace, all this. And I actually feel, yes, for us, it can be very sad. We're not going to see that person physically tomorrow. Absolutely. Very emotional. We start to look back on our experiences with them, all that grief, 100%. But the other side is, can't we celebrate that person in that moment and say, wow, what wonderful achievements, what this person brought to the world. They are now going to move forward. They're going to connect with their animal friends, their guides. They're going to be welcomed by the family who are going to say, wow, in particular, we'll talk about the lady who was a medium. Oh, look at this wonderful work you've done, connecting so many families with those messages from the spirit world. That should be honored. But instead we get this, da, 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 da. It's like, even that music, you can feel it pulling you down. Rest in peace. You know, I just can't deal with it. I think it should be, yes, absolutely. It could be sad, emotional, all those things. But let's not project ourselves onto that. Let's celebrate that person's life. Let's honor them. That's what you're doing when you're having these funerals, celebrations, like when you're putting a post up on Facebook, you're honoring that person's life. Not by saying it's the end of the world, but by saying what a wonderful impact they had on this world. Yeah.
I agree. And I think
I've made myself clear enough.
I think you're very clear. I'm very, very clear. Is again, don't make it about yourself. It's
100%.
not about you. It's and I've seen this even in funerals where it's actually nothing to do with the person that's died. It's more to do with the guilt that the person's projecting in the eulogy. And I think this is why I don't really like funerals, because there is a lot of projections and
Oh,
that is
100%. I've said it a million times. When the day comes to mind, I don't want somebody going up there going, this guy is absolutely perfect, holier than thou. I want the real self. That's what I would want. And I think that's what most people would want. And there is an awful lot of projection. And I'm not saying, we don't always think straight in these times, do we? They can be very topsy-turvy. It's all understandable, that, but celebrate that person's life. And actually that will bring a lift to you. I've had it recently, readings were the same, hanging on to the last 10 minutes of my life. And now I looked and being in that hospital, what about the 60, 70 years before and everything we experienced? What about that time we went to Blackpool and we're on the beach? What about that time we're on holiday and you fell in the pool and those happy times? And this is where I actually feel, as part of the grief process, pictures can be very helpful. When we're ready, looking through all the old family pictures, the happy times, sit there, laugh, cry, and eventually they'll be right by your side in spirit, laughing and crying too.
just, life is for the living. Honor your loved one's legacy by living your life and celebrate your life, celebrate their life. And it's not the end. One day you'll be back home to spirit.
And what you can find, similar to the RIP thing, and this is for me where a little bit of it's where the inner work is needed a little bit more, is will people put things up every year then, and it'll be the same scenario like the RIP stuff. It's not honouring anymore. It's actually, a lot of people talk about let them be at the minute, let it go. It's about letting things be. And honouring that connection you've had in any way. Even with our animal friends, blimey, that hurts more than anything, doesn't it? When we lose an animal to the spirit world. But honour that time you've spent together. Honour that you've chosen them and they've chosen you. I feel in the death process, we tend to go into the
victim,
the victim, the darker end of things, instead of balancing things out with the light as well.
I think if there was more awareness behind the reincarnation process, or a clear understanding, even teaching young children as young as you can about what death is and life is eternal, beyond the religious indoctrinations. I'm talking about pure love, light and truth values. I think it will help people get out of that darker
I think
mindset.
You're right. I think the discussion when you're a child or when you're ready, it should be had about death. I think it should be talked about a little bit more, and that'll actually help prepare, because a lot of children, when someone passes or you experience that first death, can be very traumatic. And maybe we're not prepared as well for that. And that's by sort of society as a whole, maybe even in schools, talking about, even in reincarnation, quite often we talk about the beginning, but not the end. Only in the end of sense where you're going back to spirit and you're not going to judge yourself, and you're not going to be judged, and stuff. But actually the process and what can happen in those last.
And we mentioned earlier on earlier on in this podcast, it's a subject that is a little bit taboo. It's a subject we don't want to talk about, reincarnation. It gets put to one side. Maybe we'll do that unconsciously.
But it's like that in life as well.
We all do it. I mean, I'll look at our will. I'll look at my, paying for my funeral when I'm in my 70s or 80s. And actually in a lot of ancient cultures, it was prepared even when you were born.
Yeah.
It was part and process. But it's been a fabulous, really insightful podcast, this one.
Yeah.
Just to round it off here, should we fear death?
Well, no, but it's understandable. It's part of our journey in this life, in this era, of understanding life after death. That's what's driven an awakening in many of us, and in a knowing, wherever we find that, it's important. And do you know everything? And when we did that interview years ago with David Icke, he said, if you trace back most fears, they come back to the fear of death. So if you're able to alleviate that fear of death at any level, you're going to live your life a lot freer.
One thing we didn't mention which is, I think, anyway, and we've got this a lot in readings and demonstration, is if you had a fallout with your mum and your dad and they come through and they want to ask for your forgiveness, and if you reject it, what happens?
I would say,
so if you are reading for somebody and you've got a loved one coming through saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I was not a very nice person."
well, I've seen that scenario where people have forgiven and they're ready for that, but I've also heard it where people aren't ready. I think it's going to hold them back more than the other person.
The spirit back, or the person in the physical?
In the physical.
Right.
Because I think forgiveness is the key to a lot of things, like, and things go. Talked about that in the previous episode with reincarnation, karmic loops, hanging on to things, hanging on to the identity. Let it go. Just let it go.
Life's too short.
100%.
Do you think that's where people can become very bitter with themselves and with loved ones?
Holding on to things, that can be projected into end of life scenarios as well, where things come up in families when somebody's not here anymore.
And I've had this before, where there was a lady whose father had really bad dementia, and she had not a very good relationship with him. And and she's keep seeing me over the years. I want him to go. I thought in my mind, until you forgive him and you forgive yourself, he's going to stay here. And I tried explaining this to her, and I don't know if she managed to do it or not, because it was down to her. I thought, he's going to stay here until you overcome this.
This is where you never know what contracts people have. Whatever's happening, it's happening for a reason. But it's been a really fascinating episode. I hope everybody's enjoyed listening. Please continue to support this podcast.
Like and subscribe.
Until we speak again. Say
thank you very much. Bye-bye.